so that we can trace the history of this, so we can keep people safe even today. And yet the Chinese government has refused to allow those people in to conduct an investigation.
President Trump says the U.S. will be seeking substantial compensation from China for its handling of the pandemic. Despite a report Wednesday, the first quarter gross domestic product tumbled by 4.8%. The president's still optimistic for a quick recovery.
I think next year is going to be an incredible year for our economy. I think the fourth quarter is going to be really, really good.
Federal social distancing guidelines expire on Thursday. The president says he will not renew them as states begin reopening. White House announcing a public-private partnership to speed the development of a coronavirus vaccine and urging the FDA to quickly approve the drug remdesivir for treatment of the virus. Doctors say it has been effective in clinical trials. The FBI has released 4 pages of documents, including handwritten agent notes about the interview of former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn only days into his tenure. The notes suggest the interview was a setup to trap Flynn into lying and being prosecuted. General Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, says her client was blindsided.
Completely at every turn. They schemed and planned ahead of the meeting to keep him relaxed and unguarded so that he would not even know he was the subject of the interview.
Powell telling Fox's Hannity there are 11 more pages of documents coming later this week. She predicts the federal judge who took Flynn's guilty plea on charges of lying to the FBI will have to dismiss the case. America is listening to Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
The state of Massachusetts is beginning an investigation into a veterans home in Holyoke, where at least 70 patients have died from COVID-19. Bay State Attorney General Maura Healey says among the allegations, staff didn't get personal protective gear and
that patients, residents were not properly isolated, that the facility was late and delayed reporting to state authorities who might have been able to provide assistance.
Attorney General Healey tells Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum that more than half of the remaining patients and staff at that home have tested positive. The replenished payroll protection program reportedly about to run out of money again.
Before the Senate returns next week, lawmakers are keeping tabs on the nearly $3 trillion in coronavirus relief they've authorized in recent weeks. Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio told Fox and Friends his focus is on the Paycheck Protection Program designed to save America's small businesses.
The program has problems, there's no doubt about it, because anything this size that happened this fast is going to have problems. But it remains the single most successful part of the entire CARES Act. It is when it's all said and done, after the second round, I think it will have saved or preserved upwards of 60 to 65 million jobs.
On Capitol Hill, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now says he's open to considering additional funds for state and local governments in the next relief bill. Democrats want more than $500 billion to help states cover the sudden extra costs associated with the outbreak. The NCAA throwing off 60 years of rules that college athletes not get paid. Now moving forward with a plan to allow college athletes to earn money for endorsements, personal appearances, and social media content. The broad plan is to allow athletes to strike deals with third parties, but disclose those agreements. NCAA membership will vote on the plan next January. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Social distancing math. Tossie is infected with COVID-19. She still goes out because she and her friends think it doesn't affect them. Tossie infects 3 friends. Each one infects 3 more. In 30 days, 244 people are infected, including someone's Nana. Most recover, but Nana dies. Reduce your social contact. If you only infect one person, In 30 days, the virus spreads to only 4 people. Stay home, stop the spread, save lives.
As the island stands against this virus, it just confirms that as a property owner, you shouldn't be running around trying to collect rent, fix toilets, and catch up on new laws and bills that apply. The professionals at Horizon Properties can show you how much easier and safer it would be to just have your proceeds show up at your bank each month. Call Maria Miller at Horizon Properties at 777-7792 for a free, no-obligation presentation. Horizon Properties, here to help you buy, sell, rent, and manage residential and commercial real estate.
Hofade, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yesterday, I broke with tradition and started the show by reading the free exercise clause of the, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, because I thought then and I think now that the First Amendment, the right to free exercise of religion, is under threat. But I still am dedicated to promoting the Second Amendment and the necessity that we all keep it in mind, watch out for attacks upon it, and those who would try to diminish it. So I went back to tradition, started out with the Second Amendment today. Now I've got a piece here a couple that I deal with the Second Amendment. I won't be able to do them both today, one today and one tomorrow. And I want to tell you that we've got a special event coming up today on Tall Tales, but not until after that big halftime show that you all enjoy so much. It begins at 1700 every day. That's the marching bands, the cheerleaders, the drill teams, the synchronized, well, we used to have synchronized card sections up in the grandstand, but they won't let any people up in the grandstand anymore. So we have all that, the fire eater, the sword swallower, and at the end of the big halftime celebration, we have a barrage of cannon fire that's very inspiring. I know you all really like it. You probably like it just as much as I do. But after the big halftime show, we have a special announcement about a new TV serial that you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned for. You're going to stay tuned anyhow, but, you know, that's what the radio announcers say. Oh, stay tuned for, right? Stay tuned for 2 hours of the absolute best afternoon talk radio on any FM station in the Western Pacific, because that's where you are right now. And as the lady said, if you want to talk to our international radio listening audience, all you got to do is dial 888-TALK, 888-8255. If you're in the North American numbering plan somewhere, put a 671 in front of it. And for our international radio listeners, the country code for the United States of America is 1-671-888-8255. You do that and you will find yourself on the line with none other than the real Joe Cruz. Well, you must be a little slow. You didn't even give yourself a hand there, real Joe Cruz.
No, so I'm being humble today, sir.
Oh, okay. Are you as proud of your humility as I am?
I am, sir.
That's good. It's kind of catching, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and if telephoning is not your bag, you can always post on our Facebook page I look at the Facebook pages periodically. Occasionally, I will read them on the air. I've even built episodes of Tall Tales around a Facebook page. So we are high-tech here on Tall Tales, notwithstanding the superannuation of the host. Okay, so I did the Second Amendment, and I've got a little squib here dealing with the Second Amendment. You remember the New York gun rights case, the case that dealing with New York's rule that you could have a gun in your house, but you couldn't take it anywhere. And the district court for the Southern District of New York ruled in favor of the statute. The Second Circuit affirmed. The plaintiffs applied for cert. The Supreme Court granted cert. It came on for argument, and the Supreme Court decided that the case was moot because the city of New York and the state changed their laws, in effect giving the plaintiffs everything that the court could have given them. So the court said the case is moot. Now, and I'm going to get a little farther into that tomorrow, but there were, I think it was Justice Alito who wrote as we say, a scathing dissent and said, maybe we can get, or no, it was Gorsuch, I'm sorry, Kavanaugh, who said we could get to some of these Second Amendment questions when we deal with some of the other matters that may come before us. Well, right now there are 10 petitions for certiorari before the court, any one of which could be granted. And there's Mance versus Barr, whether the federal ban on interstate gun sales violates the Second Amendment or the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. So I didn't even know there was an interstate ban on handgun sales, but we'll find out about the constitutionality of it maybe. Then there's Rogers versus Grewal and a challenge to a New Jersey's handgun carry permit scheme, whether the Second Amendment protects the right to carry a handgun outside the home for self-defense. Now, that's really important because you'll remember that Heller decided that a person has an individual right to keep a firearm in his house, to keep. The Second Amendment says keep and bear arms, but we don't have a ruling on what bear arms means in the Second Amendment. Then there's Pena versus Horan and a challenge to a California law banning most commonly used handguns. The petition asks the justices to weigh in on the scope of the Second Amendment. Gould versus Lipscomb and a challenge to Massachusetts hand carry permit scheme, whether the Second Amendment protects the right to carry a handgun outside the home for self-defense. That's the question that really needs to be answered. And whether the government condition the right to carry a handgun outside the home on the showing of a special need to carry a firearm. How about I'm scared? Would that work? Cheeseman versus Polillo, challenge to a New Jersey handgun carry permit scheme. Sholek versus New Jersey, challenge to New Jersey handgun carry permit scheme. Werman versus Healy, challenge to Massachusetts ban on the possession of, get this, assault weapons. You know, if you ever want to drive a liberal crazy, just use the word assault weapons in a sentence. So you could be talking about baseball with the lefty, and you could say, yeah, baseball's a great game, but you know what I really like to do? I like to go out and line up a bunch of tin cans and shoot at them with my assault weapon. Whoa. Malpaso versus Pelosi. No, it's Pelosi, not Pelosi. Otherwise, I could tell you I want that one to come out. In a challenge to Maryland's handgun carry permit scheme, whether the Second Amendment protects the right to carry handguns outside the home for self-defense. Well, I'm going to use my crystal ball here, and I'm going to see a bunch of these carry outside the home cases consolidated and come on for a single hearing. We've got Culp versus Raoul, whether the Second Amendment requires Illinois to allow non-residents to apply for a concealed carry license. So some dude who lives in Wisconsin and drives over to Illinois, just crosses the state line at Genoa City, Wisconsin, drives into Richmond, Illinois, where liquor is a lot cheaper than it is in Wisconsin, wants to carry a concealed weapon so that nobody steals his booze. I can see it all now. Wilson versus Cook County. Cook County is, of course, Chicago. Challenge to Cook County's ban on assault rifles and large capacities, as well as to the Second Amendment analysis used by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit to uphold the ban. So those are all cases for which there are petitions for certiorari pending before the Supreme Court. And you've heard it on Tall Tales many times. The way cases get from the circuit courts or the state Supreme Courts to the United States Supreme Court is on what's called cert. So one of the losing party in the court below must file a petition for writ of certiorari. And if 4 justices sign off on that petition and grant the writ of certiorari, the case is brought up and will be heard by the Supreme Court of the United States. So I suspect before this term is over, or certainly in the next term, we'll see cases that are as important as Heller versus District of Columbia and McDonald versus Chicago and the whole Second Amendment, realm. Okay, so having dealt with the Second Amendment, we go on to what, Real Joe Cruz?
Zemi Ikutni.
Jimmy Ikutni. All right. Real Joe Cruz, did you happen to see any unicorns on your way to the station?
No, sir, I didn't.
Any black swans?
No, I didn't, sir.
It's that kind of a day.
It is.
Yeah, the Daily News has a local editorial.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh. It's like the second full moon in the same month, right? It just doesn't happen very often. So here we are with the Daily News. Residents need clear answers or local aid programs. So many Guam residents struggle to get by during these extraordinarily difficult times. Things are only made worse by the uncertainty of when federal direct assistance will finally come through. Each resident on the 2018 tax rolls is due $1,200 if he or she, now that's an interesting choice of words, he or she. What should they have used, Real Joe Cruz?
They, sir.
Of course. Am I reading this and determining that the Daily News is not politically correct?
You're right, sir.
Using such archaic terms as he and she?
Yes, how dare they?
Yeah. What are your pronouns, Real Joe Cruz?
They.
They, them, yeah, okay, all right. All right. So each resident on the 2018 tax rolls is due $1,200 if he or she earns $75,000 a year or less, or $2,400 for joint filers with an income up to $150,000. Those with dependent children are to receive $500 per kid. Checks were sent for residents who make $10,000 or less based on 2018 tax filings. Those out of work due to, now the editorial says COVID-19, but as a matter of editorial authority, I refer to the virus and everything related to it as the Wuhan virus. I'm not going to try to put whipped cream on a pile of dung by calling it something that it's not. Those out of work due to Wuhan virus are entitled to unemployment compensation for 39 weeks, with a window stretching from January 27 to December 31. On Guam, the check will be for $945 for 13 weeks, even if you didn't make anywhere near that much. For 13 weeks, then $345 for 26 weeks. But that money has yet to come, and there's no clear date when residents struggling to get by will get the money because the funding awaits further federal approvals. Now, I'm just going to let it go this time, but I don't use the word federal because we don't have a federal government anymore. We did at one time, but our federal government changed itself into a national government. So the national government tries to control us, and it sees itself being in charge with the assistance of 50 administrative districts called states. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to stick with the word federal here so as not to confuse somebody. Governor Lulian Guerrero said she anticipates stimulus checks by the first week of May. Now, this is the same Governor Lulian Guerrero who told us that she wanted to have the war claims checks in people's hands by Liberation Day. How many times did that one change? Till the checks finally came out in what, February, March of this year? Yeah. So my suggestion to all those out in our international radio listening audience, when you hear Governor Lulian Guerrero tell you when the money will come out, make sure that you have a grain of salt handy. In fact, you're probably going to need a whole salt shaker if she gives you. Yeah, there you go. Convention here on Tall Tales. Occasionally we use a little sarcasm, play on words, double entendre, things like that. And that word got back to me that sometimes people take me literally. So just to, I didn't say seriously, I said literally. So just to avoid that, we have a convention here so that when I'm engaging in sarcasm, the real Joe Cruz will, yeah. So you'll know it's sarcasm, right? So when Lulian Guerrero tells you that checks are in the mail, make sure you have a grain of salt handy. There you go. It's a long time for residents who live paycheck to paycheck who have been spending their savings or running up credit card debt. Gov Guam got $117 million for prevention measures, medical supplies, personnel protective equipment, and unappropriated costs incurred due to Wuhan virus. Some senators want a portion to be used as direct aid to residents, but the governor still doesn't have a clear plan for how the $117 million will be used. But I think we're to be assured that it's okay, everything's safe, because the money's in the Bank of Guam. No problem. Quote, I will be providing any kind of help to individuals who need help or businesses who need help, the governor said. I just need to make sure that we're not violating any kind of conditions or requirements as to the use of federal funds. Paragraph. Those barely making it need more than promises or guesses about when desperately needed money will come. They need clear answers and more transparency from government leaders or a local program to provide money they need. Well, more transparency from government leaders, I don't know. You're probably going to get your money before you see that, because the first thing that the governor did in order to deal with this emergency was to gut a major transparency feature from our law, the open government law. You know, how that assisted, how that killed the virus is something I still haven't figured out, but that was the first thing that she did. Okay, well, Daily News, you are in the running for a blue star with this editorial, so it's not I know the blue star won't go by default today. Now it's going to be my job to determine whether yours is better, Daily News, than the Post. Here's the Post. We need to do more so displaced workers' families aren't left behind. I wonder if these guys got together and did their homework together. Violating the physical distance rules, yeah. On March 25, we wrote that everyday Guamanians needed an economic lifeline if they're not associated with a government of Guam paycheck, which has been kept intact. Sadly, it's been more than 1 month since we wrote about it, and yet the situation has gotten worse for an estimated 38,000 of Guam's private sector workforce and their families. Regular working families who contribute to Guam's economy each year as taxpayers, and many others who contribute to our island's tourist industry, have spent the last 6 to 8 weeks praying for some relief, wondering how they can stretch the last few dollars in their bank account to put food on the table, pay utility bills, car payments, rent, or mortgages. Now, in light of this financial hardship that everyone's going through, we have canceled indefinitely all subscription fees for Tall Tales. So it won't cost you a nickel to listen to Tall Tales, no matter how long this emergency goes on. While some banks have offered loan payment deferrals programs, the bills will not go away. They will still be due later. The situation is growing more dire by the day, leaving many to wonder, where is the sense of urgency from elected officials to stand up and do something? Elected officials, that would be that same group called the legislature that was on strike for so long until Jim Moylan finally shamed them into action by standing in front of the legislature with a sign addressing this very same problem, as it were. Government officials' reassurances that work is being done, preparations underway, and discussions are being had are just not enough. There have been no economic relief payments other than the checks sent to people who make less than $10,000 a year. There has been no release of unemployment benefits. So far, there have been letters from government officials and discussions by and between them. Oh yeah, they've been discussing these things. Yet during this time, the government of Guam committed to paying as much as $4 million for hotels that were turned into quarantine facilities that have had less than 50% occupancy, costing taxpayers for many rooms that weren't even occupied. I think Tony Babauta is the government official that's in charge of room occupation, but I'll have to check my notes on that one. Part of this money could have been used to provide cash aid or some other relief to those who need it most. Giving out $11 million to those who make under $10,000 was a good start, but it isn't enough for families who are now going 6, some even 8 weeks without a paycheck and without assistance. We've seen how generous our community can be during times of disaster. No family should go hungry, especially if they can't purchase food because of the sudden loss of their jobs due to the Wuhan virus. Perhaps as a community, we could all dig into our cabinets and look for a few extra canned goods and non-personal food items and donate them to a family we know in need, to the Salvation Army Corps, to the Archdiocese of Agana's ministry that helps feed the poor and the homeless, or Catholic social services. Families are hungry. Families are hurting. Saying, quote, "We're in this together," means nobody should be left behind. If elected officials aren't going to do much, it's time the community does. Well, they're both pretty good. This is a tough one. They both wrote about the same subject. Both put, called the government to account. Both had good punchlines. I think the thing that I liked the best about the Post is that they reference private charities, the Salvation Army, the Ministry for the Homeless, Catholic Social Services. So that could be enough to tip the Daily News, to tip the scale in favor of the Post. However, you know, I like to see, I want to see myself as someone who kind of develops talent here, as opposed to a referee who just calls fouls. So I think today I'm going to do something unusual, and I'm going to take my blue pen and I'm going to mark the blue star oh, my star kind of got screwed up here. Yeah. I'm going to mark my blue star on both of them. Yeah. Right there. So you have to, you put them together and you got a blue star. You take them apart and each paper got a half a blue star. But I think it says somewhere that a half a star is better than none, right, Real Joe Cruz?
So you want to go to a break?
Yeah, let's take a break and then I'll come back. I got to pull a Rush Limbaugh here after the break.
GPSI Guam is a professional technical services company that is a registered contractor for the federal government. They are SBA approved, 8A, and Hub Zone certified, providing program and project management, administration, technical support, logistics, and commodities. Find out more about GPSI and how they can help you today. Contact GPSI if you need assistance in meeting your small business subcontracting goals at 671-477-3058. They'll be happy to assist. The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are, back again. And I'm going to, along the lines of editorials, I'm going to read some things that appeared in the Post here recently. And I'm going to pull a Rush Limbaugh here. Let me see what I got on the phone first. Yeah, I'm going to pull a Rush Limbaugh because, you know, Real Joe Cruz, I hate to talk about myself on the program.
It's about you, sir.
Well, this time I have to because it's about me.
I figured
But
that.
I'm going to take Martinez first. Good afternoon, Martinez.
Hello, Bob. It's Martinez.
Yes, sir, Martinez.
Churchill Downs would have been Sunday Guam time, Saturday over there in Kentucky. I always watch it, the Triple Crown, but I guess we're not going to have it this year. I'll miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. But anyway, I don't know if Total listeners know that Bob Klitzkie is just about an expert in GovGuam personnel stuff, especially stuff that deal with the Civil Service Commission, because Bob's got his heart and interest in it. And in the 28th Guam legislature, he was chair that oversight of that. I got a question to follow up, then a comment. Under the GARP, personnel rules and regulations of GovGuam, because the media is not that clear, if there is an emergency, a declared emergency, are the ones that work entitled to double pay, or are they entitled to double pay or comp time, or are they entitled to neither? Do you know?
I know. I do know they are entitled to double pay, but it could be comp time, but more than likely double pay. Yes, that's in the.
If it's comp time, does it have to be within a certain amount of time, or it could be like 4 or 5 months later because the Guam just can't afford to have those many employees off for a while?
The Fair Labor Standards Act. The Fair Labor Standards Act has some regulations as to when comp time must be used, how much you can accrue for a particular absence, etc. So it can't. It's not the time frame would not be unlimited.
All right. So if they don't use it within that time frame, then they have to get double time. Is that it?
Well, the Fair Labor Standards Act would require that if the employee doesn't get comp time, that he gets cash instead.
Double pay, right?
Yes.
And that's if they don't get it within a certain amount of time, the comp time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, now, my comment, we heard the press conference today. It looks like a lot of the hard-working GovGuam employees are going to stay home and get paid. Now the challenge is on the other two branches, Speaker Tina and Chief Justice F. Philip Carbolito. Are they going to just follow, or are they going to send their employees to work like a lot of the public, especially the private sectors, think they should? All they got to do is wear masks. And by the way, we got 58,000 masks yesterday from FEMA. These are not surgical masks. These are the good masks for the public. And do social distancing. Let's see what the other two branches do, or they're just going to follow, or a lot of the private sector are hurting real bad.
Well,
you know what I mean?
That would be
what the other two branches are going to do.
That would be the easiest, and I suspect those who make the decisions for the other two branches have this little song going on in their minds. If we don't do the same thing that the executive branch does, our employees are going to say, "That's not fair." And you know how important Martinez, you know how Martinez, you know how important fair is, right?
Yes, I do, Bob.
Yeah.
I really know how important fair is.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see, and I guess the hard-working GovGuam employee gets to stay home and get paid, while the private sector that's been laid off, boy, life is really fair or unfair. Anyway, I'll be listening, Bob. Thanks for the advice and your comments.
All right. Thank you for calling, Martinez. Martinez. Okay. So, I had a green pen, and I lost it. But anyhow, I've got to get into something here that I was going to do the other day. I wrote a letter to Speaker Barnes about quarterbacks at the legislature and how instead of voting, senators, when their name is called in a roll call vote, will say pass. And they would do that sometimes 3 times before they finally get around to voting. And the reason that senators do that is sinister. They do it so that I call it strategic voting, and the object is to get the correct result and vote right. And the best example I could think of was after the great salary smash and grab of 2014, when for the next legislature, time after time, Mike San Nicolas and the San Nicolas posse brought bills forward to roll back that salary increase in different iterations. And almost every senator at one time or another had the opportunity to vote in favor of cutting his own salary, but the votes always failed. And the example that I used was on a bill where Tina Rose Munia Barnes was called in the middle of the roll call. It goes by alphabetical order, and the vote coming to her was 7-7. So she voted against the bill and kept the money. Now, if the vote coming to her had been 8-6, she could have voted yes, could have voted in favor of the bill and still kept the money. And it's that kind of game that senators play when they pass. They're not so dense that they haven't figured out how they're going to vote until the second time their name is called in a roll call. It is a form of corruption where senators are able to deal with their votes in a manner other than voting for or against a bill for good reasons. So I wrote an editorial. I wrote a letter to Barnes about that. And the Daily News, the Post, edited it to fit the news hole and ran it. And then a couple days after that, the Post ran another letter from a certain Senator Senator Titano, entitled "Making the Record Clear." And she attempted to rebut what I had put in my letter. And I was going to spend some time here on Tall Tales going through her letter. It would have been a lot of fun, frankly, because Senator Titano's rebuttal actually was more of a confession than a rebuttal. But I didn't have a chance to do that. But I did write a letter to the Post in response to what it published from Senator Titano. And that's what I have in front of me right now. So in case you missed it, it's on frombob.blogspot.com. You could go there and read it. I'm going to spend a little time with it here. And it was edited so that the name Senator Kelly Marsh appears in the letter rather than Titano, which I think is the proper name. And for those of you who haven't listened before, we have a senator whose name is Kelly Marsh, but for most purposes, she puts her name down as Kelly Marsh, parenthesis, Titano, close parenthesis. So it takes too long to go through that parenthesis, close parenthesis routine. So I've assigned a sound value to the parenthesis symbol, and a parenthesis sounds like this. So instead of saying parenthesis, Titano, close parenthesis, I can just say Titano. But let me get into this this letter here that I wrote. As Rush would say, I don't usually like to talk about myself on the show, but this time I have to. This time it's about me. Senator Kelly Marsh ends her rebuttal of my letter to the editor of April 21, dealing with strategic voting and senators acting like quarterbacks by passing rather than voting, thusly. Quote, "At the end of the day, informed by the above, I think about each bill deeply." Could I have a little music here, Real Joe Cruz? I should have prepped you for this before. At the end of the day, informed by the above, I think about each bill deeply, and I vote my conscience. Every leader should. That's how Senator started her letter. The senator passed on the first roll call vote on Bill 335, it's the curfew bill, suggesting that her conscience didn't come into play until the second roll call when she voted no. That is, she passed the first time her name was called. From my April 21 letter, this came from my April 21 letter that was mentioned in my first letter. Query, are they, that's Senators Marsh, Shelton, and T. Terlahi, so indecisive that when the roll was called they hadn't yet decided on how to vote? Of course not. The pass had a far more sinister purpose, to score points. The corrupt practice of what can be labeled strategic voting is not new, as is shown in an opinion piece I wrote on December 27, 2015 in another publication. Senator Titano defends her late deployment of conscience, her late deployment of conscience by telling us that she doesn't engage in the corrupt practice of passing as much as other senators. Mom, I take cookies out of the cookie jar sometimes, but the other kids take a lot more cookies than I. So I'm a good girl, right, Mommy? Yeah. Senator Marsh defends her late deployment of conscience by telling us that she doesn't engage in the corrupt practice of passing as much as other senators. She said, quote, "This term, both Democrat and Republican senators have stated that they pass a total of 136 times on 69 bills in 2019 alone." So you can see why I get my skivvies in a bunch every time I see senators do this passing, because it's corrupt and it's widespread and it happens too often, and it's time to put a stop to it. So Marsh says, this term, both Democrat and Republican senators have stated that they passed a total of 136 times on 69 bills in 2019 alone. That's why I said this should be labeled a confession, not a rebuttal. And she goes on to say, as a point of interest, in 2019, 2 senators stated pass, the least out of everyone, at just 3 times apiece. And I was one of those 2. Wow. Yeah. And then, without citing one reason, Senator Marsh says there are various reasons why being able to pass has value. She doesn't tell what they are. It's up to each senator to determine the value and need for their use or non-use of it for themselves. And then we go into the opinion piece that I wrote on December 27, dealing with Barnes and passing in the 7-7 vote. So I'll skip over that and get to the end. In closing, Senator Marsh proclaimed, a little music here, real Joe Cruz, at the end of the day, informed by the above, I think about each bill deeply, and I vote my conscience. Every leader should. And then I wrap it up by saying the senator could assist her fellow senators in living up to her proclamation by championing changes in the standing rules and the law, calling for the cutting of quarterbacks in the legislature by the abolition of passing instead of voting. We need integrity, not gamesmanship, in our legislature. Yeah, if I had that green pen, I was going to mark Senator letter to the editor with a green palm tree that if I can find it, I'm going to reserve for special recognition for all of the environmental wackos that we have in our legislature. Okay, so let's see. I got another Joe. Who else but another Joe? We'll take a break and then we'll come back to another Joe.
Rärnim. Paraus utsia rerewesemwer COVID-19 ika coronavirus. Förriwisom ko sapnafeten. Kope betsökkyn, kope riveriböts, me kope warnefits. Toa seriaravas pura pökkökyra, tsöyran isemmun. Esa porkotsu ike tsuffegen. Esa porkapong, esa porfarropats ike kareffegen ngiri arabas. Kiits sipon nautiunorim. Arapara betsökkyrer iris. Anna fava sösö, am teiso, me ammoge kioboge viennim. Paryn faitavin. Arapara rivöts, kopo kykyo vattapa arabas. Torubom murira warto serireri veirisin. Kosa vattapa vesom, potum me avum. Torifitsipom meia kiattaporajan. Ei paraus, aetto seri atski office Manielu, McCunison Resource Center, Mekkosteserin, Choice Broadcasting. Kriso Zabur.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Okay, so short break, and we're back to, let's see, I've got another Joe on line 1, and on line 2, I've got a call from Saipan. That could be R. James, right? Is it R. James? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, another Joe.
So it seemed as though this might become one of the issues during the campaign for re-election during this election year cycle, as to what the reasons are that senators may or may not pass. I have a question for you, Bob. Is this as bad or similar to when the senators used to vote president?
That never happened, as far as I can recollect.
They never used to vote president?
No.
No. I must be mixing it up with somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
I think you're thinking about former President Obama, who voted president in the United States Senate more than he did anything else. But go on.
Okay. So there was something earlier today in the news regarding voter ID law. And I was wondering if that was something that you noticed, or do you think it was something that would become an issue before this coming presidential election, voter ID law?
Well, it's been an issue for a long time because the Democrats don't want it. They don't want anybody to have to show an ID card when he registered to vote or when he shows up at the polls. And when Republicans say, no, we have to know who the people are. We only want people to vote once. And, of course, that's against the Democrat philosophy, vote early and vote often. So the Democrats think it's a way of, the Republicans see it as a way of safeguarding the integrity of the ballot. The Democrats say it's voter suppression. Classic dichotomy, because, you know, people of color and you know, other people don't have photo IDs. I think it'd be really, really difficult in the year 2020 to find anybody who doesn't have a photo ID card. And of course, you've had to show your identification on Guam ever since, and it's never been a big deal here. Right?
Yeah, I mean, just to get on and off island with the naval government, you have to have some sort of authorization, which I'm guessing would require photo ID.
Well, we have something that is called the Cedula, C-E-D-U-L-A. It's the Guam ID card, and it's actually a holdover from the Spanish administration, where everyone had to have a citizen's ID card, and during the naval administration, every person on the island had to have a Cedula. After the naval administration, it was no longer mandatory, but most people went down, especially folks that didn't have driver's licenses, and got that Guam ID card.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Bob. Thanks, and I'll just listen. Thank you very.
Okay, another Joe, and let's see. I've got R. James on line 2. Good afternoon, R. James.
Good afternoon, Bob. I'm going to ask two questions, and then I'm going to relate to you the reason why I'm asking, because I really don't know. I haven't checked into it. What is the cutoff point for income for someone to be able to file for unemployment income assistance? And is there any differentiation between whether it's a single parent or, you know, I mean, I really don't know the answer to these, but it came up this morning during a conversation with one of my neighbors. And here's the reason why I'm asking about this, because I even told her, I said, you should call Uncle Bob and you should ask him about this so people can kind of understand. I think what is about to be brought to the surface as a scary amount of people that are going to get left out with regards to the payroll protection plan and unemployment and different things like that. My next door neighbor is probably one of the hardest working single moms that I know. she works a full-time job and she works a part-time job, and she's got, 2 kids at home, and just, Murphy's Law, the job that she's been laid off from is the one that provides the bulk of her income, and the one that is certainly helps her get by but is of lesser pay is the one that she's been able to continue to keep working from home via computer, etc. And, she told me that she called and she asked, and she was told that, oh, well, she makes more than $10,000, she's not going to qualify. And so then she called someone else, and they said, oh, it's $24,000, and if you make more than $24,000 a year, you don't qualify. Well, okay, she's probably, like I said, one of the hardest working single moms that I can think of. She has a sense of self-esteem, and I guess her attitude would be a lot like my grandfather, who said many, many times, being a person who lived through the Great Depression, that he would literally die in the gutter and starve to death before he would stand in the soup lines. I think she's very much like this. She's a very, very conscientious lady. And I think we have a lot of people out there that work a full-time job and a part-time job, if not 2 full-time jobs. And when things are running on an even keel and there's not any, Murphy's Laws and gotchas that pop up, they're probably one step above paycheck to paycheck. But now with this happening, I think a bunch of these people are really just going to be left out in the cold, because somebody's going to shrug and say, oh, well, you're not poverty this, poverty that, but you make enough, you don't qualify. But they still have lost more than 50% of their income, and they're not going to be able to make the ends meet on this. If somebody says, oh, I'm sorry, you make more than $10,000 a year, you don't qualify.
Well, let me take a crack.
I really don't. I didn't know the answer to this question this morning, which is the reason why I'm asking.
Let me take a crack at your questions. Okay, now the $10,000 comes in for a program that was strictly a local program, and that is that anyone who made 10 grand or less in 2018 was eligible for, I can't remember how much it was, $1,200 or something like that. That's a local program. So if you made more than 10, you weren't eligible for that. As far as unemployment is concerned, we don't have unemployment insurance here. I think Guam and the Virgin Islands and American, the insular territories are the only places under the American flag that don't have unemployment insurance. All of the 50 states do. So correct. Because we don't, Michael St. Nicholas was able to get a special provision for us that pays everybody $360 worth of unemployment insurance, and then a cap taking it up to $945 for the first, I can't remember how many weeks, like 3 months, and then back down to $360. I can't remember the details here. The only requirement for unemployment is that you have lost your job. There's no caps based on wealth or income or that sort of thing. So I got to go, James. I got the big halftime show coming up. Make sure you stick around, James, for that special feature we're having after the halftime show.
Will do, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, James.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Guidelines expiring. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The federal social distancing recommendations run out today. President Trump says as states are reopening, he will not renew them.
We're going to be very careful as we open. A lot of people, a lot of governors are opening.
The state of Florida among those.
Most businesses have been closed for 2 months in Florida, like many other places.
We obviously need an economic recovery.
And now Governor Ron DeSantis says the state minus Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm will do phase 1 reopening on Monday, allowing restaurants to open at lower capacity and elective surgeries to resume. He says the state fared much better than New York, despite predictions.
Fox's Eben Brown. Just as California was preparing to lift restrictions, Governor Gavin Newsom imposing new ones. A memo to law enforcement says the governor will order all California's beaches closed starting this Friday. Last weekend, an estimated 80,000 people flocked to the shore. Some eye-opening FBI documents in the case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn have been made public.
4 pages of unsealed documents, and Michael Flynn attorney Sidney Powell says 11 more pages are coming, and they are damning. We are talking about emails and handwritten notes that appear to show that senior FBI members were determined to prosecute Michael Flynn regardless of what they found. Going into the interview, Bill Priestap, who was then the assistant director of the FBI's counterintelligence division, wrote, quoting here, "What is our goal? Truth, admission, or to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired?" Disgraced former FBI agent Peter Strzok was also involved in that very Flynn interview.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, but says it was under duress. His attorney predicts the case will have to be dismissed. Asian stock markets closing Thursday higher. Dow futures up almost 100 points. America is listening to Fox News.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Los Angeles will become the first big city in the country to offer coronavirus testing to every one of its residents.
As long as this disease spreads, we have to continue to scale. And as long as this disease takes lives, we must test.
LA's Mayor Eric Garcetti says even people without symptoms will be eligible for testing. New York State now closing in on 300,000 known coronavirus cases, a squabble breaking out between the governor and New York City's mayor over a possible source of continuing infection.
Governor Andrew Cuomo railing against New York City's subway trains crowded with homeless people who could be infected with COVID-19.
The cars were filthy. They were disgusting.
The state called on the Metropolitan Transportation Authority to do more, while New York City's mayor called on the state to do more.
The state runs the MTA, clearly. The state has a whole lot of the pieces to the puzzle here.
And the MTA called out the mayor. Quote, the mayor should get out of his car and into the subway so he can see what is really going on and solve the problem of his own making.
Fox's Brian Yennis. Some potential new clues about the whereabouts of North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un. Satellite photos show his yacht and some of his favorite speedboats at a luxury coastal resort in northeastern North Korea, suggesting he may be hiding out there from the coronavirus, which Pyongyang insists it doesn't have, or recuperating from a reported cardiac procedure. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo asked about Chairman Kim's health on Fox News at night.
Not much to add there, but the American people should simply know that whatever's going on there, whatever takes place, President Trump and our administration are committed to the very same objectives we set out, which is the final and fully denuclearized North Korea that President Trump and Chairman Kim set out back in Singapore just a couple of months back.
I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Another great halftime show. I, as is my usual custom, I cruise through the Facebook comments during the big halftime show, and I got to remind Jesse. Jesse, one of the house rules is that we don't play pin the tail on the talk show host here on Tall Tales. So if you have an overpowering desire to play pin the tail on a talk show host, go find a set of that game called Pin the Tail on the Donkey and do that instead. Okay, so we wrapped up our big halftime show, and as promised at the beginning of Tall Tales, we have a special event for you right now. You'll recall that I'm always attempting to broaden the talents of the real Joe Cruz. There was a time when he had a little feature on Tall Tales called An Afternoon with Yogi Berra. And then he did the Sherlock Holmes series. And I'm constantly working on his abilities as a thespian. And I don't lisp. As a thespian. Because, you know, what the heck, Tom Cruise can't live forever. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
That's true, sir.
Yeah, so Real Joe Cruz is going to give you a little preview of an upcoming feature on TT-TV. So go ahead, Real Joe Cruz.
Don't miss the first episode of the new TT-TV production of The 19th Floor. Tony and Rebecca inhabit a secret domain, the 19th floor, that can't be reached by telephone. Don't miss on the exciting moment. Watch Rebecca rent all the rooms on the 19th floor. Watch Rebecca move from room 1736 to room 1909. See Linda tell a story about the TB suite. What did Tony do in room 1909? The suite. Find out if Tony recovered. Watch Gov Guam spend $1.6 million on hotels. Feel the burn as Ed searches for and can't find the contracts for the hotels. Watch the governor say she signed those hotel contracts. And watch A.G. Levin on a jet plane say, we do not have anything related to contracts for quarantine sites. Learn that Bank of Guam holds a $32 million mortgage on the hotel with the 19th floor. Watch Crystal Paco San Augustine tap dance when she's asked how quarantine hotels were selected. Ask yourself how many double agents work on the 19th floor. Watch the governor tell how long she thinks the emergency will last. Possibly forever. Disclaimer, neither Quentin Tarantino nor the Coen brothers assisted in the production or direction of the 19th floor.
Wow, that's going to be quite a program, Real Joe Cruz.
I believe so, sir.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I got R Carl on the phone here, right? R. Carl, are you going to watch the 19th floor?
Oh, man, that just sounds gripping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, especially the way Real Joe read that. I mean, I was sitting here munching on popcorn, you know, just thinking, wow, this is going to be great.
Yeah, it's such a great storyline. To start with such a great storyline, and, you know, it bears so much resemblance to the truth. And then with the Real Joe Cruz delivering the lines for the promo, I think in it we ought to try to syndicate it. I think it's going to be a real moneymaker. I don't know if we should go with Netflix or Amazon. I'll have to weigh that one, I guess.
Yeah, they're probably going to be bidding for it. There's going to be a bidding war.
Yeah.
So, just hold out for the most millions you can get.
Yeah. I am, after all, a capitalist, Carl. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I know we probably could spend the rest of the program talking about the 19th floor. It's going to be the most exciting thing on TV. But we could talk about a couple of other things, I suppose, if you'd like to.
Yeah, a couple of things. One of them was about your letter, which I read, and I found it very much on point, very excellent. I actually tried to post a 3-paragraph comment, but for some reason I got sucked into the Facebook rabbit hole. That's never happened before. It told me I needed to log in, which has never happened, and things went from bad to worse after that.
Well, it could very well be that want is saying, we don't want no tall tales on Facebook.
Yeah.
It could be
someone is, some insiders are sabotaging people who want to post positive things.
Right.
And also another thing about this, the governor's decision to extend the quarantine. I really have to say something about that. In the beginning, this made sense, this kind of panic mode, because we didn't know what we were facing. We didn't know the nature of the disease. The Chinese Communist Party were giving out inaccurate information. The computer models were terrible, as usual, as computer models often are. And, the projected death in the mainland was over 2 million. The governor locally was projecting over 6,000, and getting ready for mass death, But over time, we've discovered more about the disease. And an illustration of the nature of the disease. Yesterday I heard some stats about Massachusetts. For a small state, they've been hit fairly hard. They have over 8,000 deaths. The average age of those 8,000 people is, going to need a drum roll, 82 years old.
Hang on, Carl.
82 years old. Out of 8,000 people, the average age
that
is
young?
82. Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Still youngsters.
Yeah.
The age bracket 20 to 40, only one person died, 20 to 40. In the age bracket from 1 to age 19, 0 deaths. So this disease is extremely selective in who it takes. Sometimes it does take people who are outside of the 60, 70, 80 bracket, but the vast majority of cases, those are the most susceptible. And so now that we know the nature of the disease and we can focus on protecting the most vulnerable, I have an auntie who's 90, only one member in the family is able to see her because she has no children. So my nephew acts as the son like she never had and buys her groceries, takes care of her, and the rest of the family keeps their distance because they don't want her to get sick. So that's the kind of stuff we need to do. Now, her decision to extend shows no empathy for the private sector. My daughter worked very, very hard at night to finance her education at GCC to get her cosmetology certification. She was, according to her, she was threatened with a loss of her license if she dared to use her cosmetology knowledge to service anyone, even immediate family. And, she's the one that told me this, that she was threatened with the loss of her license. So to see a certain segment of the government have hair care services, I won't elaborate, but other than to say that, I think we all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the next episode of the 19th Floor, we got to work that in there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, as a father who is very proud of my kids, they've all turned out productive, responsible. This irks me, that my daughter is being, and many people in her, in the private sector like her, who have services that they can sell, they are holding on by their fingernails, trying to get by. And
Carl, I've brought this up before, but it doesn't hurt to do it again. This is a good glimpse of what socialism is like. That individual initiative, freedom, individual rights don't count for anything. Central planning and what's good for society is the decision-making mechanism. So if it's good for your society that your daughter not earn a living, that's just the way it is in a socialist system. It's just all the more reason that we've got to really be on the lookout for all of these signs of creeping socialism that have become so popular lately.
Yeah, the essence of socialism is concentration of power. A small leftist elite usually, well, always I would say, in socialist societies, who know better, and kind of herd the masses around like cattle, and know what's better. They are the intellectual and moral superiors of the masses. Those, people like us, the people out in the, the masses of people, they know what's best, and if you disagree, well, you're just wrong. So, I take issue with that. It shows, I think, a complete disconnect from the struggles of the private sector. The last figure I saw for the GovGuam figure was like 11,000 employees. That may have gone up, it may have gone down since then, I don't know. But you've mentioned there are 3 times more private sector employees.
Yeah, I just read 38,000 employees here, yeah.
Yeah, and most of those are not working. They are struggling. They're fighting for survival. And we're hearing more and more of them speak out and say, we need help. And, we don't need a handout, but if you're going to insist on quarantining us, forcing us by government force, you need to do something because this is not working out. Most people would like to go out and earn a living, but if the government officials insist on quarantine, on threat of government force, they need to do something to help the people who are being forced. So I don't agree with the desire to extend. I think we already know the nature of the disease. We need to focus on protecting the most susceptible, the elderly especially, the very best we can. You know, a public education program to protect them and help them the best we can.
Well, you know, Carl, from what I read and my my own sense of the whole thing is that we are prolonging the agony by what we're doing. We are delaying the imposition of herd immunity. We are, and the governor has said we can't come off the Wuhan virus routine until the economy stabilizes. Well, the economy has almost stabilized right now, and the stabilization point is called rock bottom. The economy will never, it will stay stable. We don't want it to stay stable. We want it to rise. And it'll never rise as long as we can't produce anything. So, you know, the more I read, and I've got a couple things here in the card that go along with this, the idea should be everybody who's vulnerable, the old folks, the people that have other health conditions, need to be told in no uncertain terms, you are in danger. Stay home. Don't go to work. Everybody else, go to work. Kids, go to school. Get out there and mingle. And, you know, this is a poor example, but when I was a youngster, when chicken pox came to town, everybody got chicken pox. And because everybody got chicken pox, it finally died down. Chicken pox, measles, all that kind of stuff. But we're not doing that. We're not developing any immunity because we're doing the wrong thing. We're doing it backwards, and in the process, we're creating a harm that's as great, if not greater, than the Wuhan virus.
Yeah, if we, you know, did everything just wonderfully, and we kept 90% of the population from being infected. The problem is that all we've done is created the conditions for the virus to sweep in a second, maybe even a third wave, because we've created the maximum number of hosts available. And, you know, the Spanish flu in 1918, it came through in 3 waves. The first wave was, the second wave was the worst one. San Francisco did extremely well during the first wave. They cordoned off various sections of the city, and they didn't allow people to travel from one section to the other, including doctors and nurses. They didn't do well in the second wave, the brutal wave. They really did a lot worse because they kind of stored up hosts for that second wave to sweep through. So we're laying the groundwork for a possible second wave and maybe a worse one. You know, what we need to do is get people who are not vulnerable, you know, like the elderly and people with health issues that make them vulnerable, to get the illness. Many people get it. They don't even feel symptoms. They're asymptomatic. And get over it. And that just, until we get to that 60%, you've mentioned the 60% as the area where herd immunity is, and I've heard it from someone else who I trust. So until we reach that point, we're just kidding ourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, Bob, that's my 2 bits.
That's our Carl for today. Well, stay tuned, our Carl. I'm going to keep you in suspense as to when the next episode of the 19th Floor will play. So you don't want to miss it.
I'll have my popcorn ready.
All right. So Romeo Carlos chimes in here. See, I've got Fred on the line. Fred, I'll be with you in just a second. I want to read this comment from seventh inning stretch. Fred, I'll get to you right after the seventh inning stretch.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Okay, seventh inning stretch. Yeah, we all stretched out seventh inning stretch here at Wrigley Field in Chicago. Empty ballpark, empty baseball field. And I wanted to read a post that Romeo put up. He says, your Carl is hitting on a very disregarded issue that is not new news and is very relevant to Guam, and how any pandemic response should manage the average age of case fatalities. Guam is one of the youngest demographic profiles in the world. As much as 60% of the population are under the age of 40. More than half are under the age of 30. Guam will experience one of the lowest case fatality rates in the world, even without any crisis management. I noted that point 2 months ago and watched as Dr. Cabrera would later cite a potential case fatality rate that was more than triple the average of nations with much older demographic profile than Guam, manipulating data and facts to terrorize the public into conforming to loose agendas. There you go. Suspicions confirmed. Never let a good crisis go to waste, he said. Before I go to Fred, I want to make something else here. I keep peeking out of the corner of my eye here. Here's a post. I don't have a gripe with single moms. I love them and respect them. I just think many conservatives could care less about their struggle. Yeah. Now, this is the classic left, who are absolutely against prejudice, right?
Wow.
Yeah, classic. They are really against prejudice, which means judging a person not on what he does, but what he is. And a classic example of the left's technique of arguing, and that is to smear someone because you don't like his political orientation and ascribe evil motives or ill motives to him. And once again, this is the object of the game here is not to play pin the tail on the talk show host. So we'll go on here with the rest of the program. And I've got Fred on line 1, and as you were, Fred on 2, and Susan on line 1. Susan, I'll get to you in just a second. Hello, Fred.
Hey, Bob. I just
want to start off by saying I'm happy that you're alive to hear me today.
You and the governor, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I did call you on the other day, but I was on hold for a while and I had to get off. But I'm glad that, or I'm happy that you get to hear me today.
Yes, sir.
Not the other day. And I was telling the real Joe, I wanted to hear myself how to say the parentheses.
Okay.
Kind of like how I sound.
You
Can
want
I practice
Fred, you want to audition, right?
I want to audition for the open and close parentheses.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if the real Joe Cruz. Can you cue Fred on that, real Joe Cruz?
And record me.
The real Joe Cruz will cue you. Cue him to
Yes.
do the sounds. Real Joe Cruz.
Are you ready, Fred?
Okay.
And action.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Spit it out, Fred. Spit it out.
I think Fred's got it. You know, then Fred, the next time I can't do the program, you're going to be on my list for a substitute host because you got it. You got the sound down pat.
Awesome. And if you don't feel like making those sounds, you can play my soundbite and then say, continue on.
And credit Fred for the soundbite, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and no credit needed, but you can use because I know it takes a lot of energy to do that. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if we can't work your soundbite into the next episode of the 19th Floor, Fred.
Thank you. Which brings me to the point where I had a little scratchy throat last night, and I was wondering who I would call at Pacific Star if I wanted the presidential suite. Do you know?
Either Rebecca or I think Linda. Maybe Linda. Start at the top. Start out with Linda.
No, she wouldn't know because she doesn't know much, remember? So she wouldn't know.
Yeah, maybe Rebecca. But, of course, Rebecca gave orders that not to transfer any calls to her room. So it's...
but can you just call front desk, like dial the 646 number, call front desk and say, I want a room on taxpayer money?
I don't know. I think you'd have to check. I think you'd have to check with Tony Babauta on that one.
All right. Well, it was just a sore throat. I thought I should isolate myself.
Yeah, I agree, Fred. Better safe than sorry.
Okay. Which brings me then to, I'll try the next time I have a sore throat. Does the administration or the government or anyone have any idea how many private businesses are closing on Guam? Do they not see what they're doing and exacerbating the situation by further delaying this P-Court 2, 1, 3, 4, all that sounds like a typhoon? And don't they not realize that after the federal money has stopped, eventually we have to say, hey, Uncle Sam, we're good now. You can't keep lying to them. That you're going to rely on private businesses to fund the government. Don't they realize what they're doing?
Well, maybe a better question, Fred, is not don't they realize, but do they care?
No, they don't. We know that already.
Yeah.
And me and you can bring it to light and everybody else, but still nothing sinks in. And like I've told you before, is anyone listening?
Yeah.
Remember I mentioned that before. So businesses are closing. Our numbers of positive cases have dropped drastically. We're at 0 or 1, which is practically nothing. Texas is opening, Georgia is opening, and we're a small little island, which doesn't even compare to the size of Texas as Georgia or California opening up or 23 other states opening up. And we are just artificially forcing the economy to stay closed, which also trickles to the tourism industry to stay closed because we're going to quarantine them, so they're not going to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And you have businesses wrapping up and gutting out their places. I don't want to mention names because that wouldn't be nice to do, but you and me and everybody knows it's on Facebook who's closing and who's gutted out and moved on from Guam. And once the all open is given, you'll see more businesses that you'll drive up to and be like, oh, you're closed. I didn't know. I didn't see that you were closed on Facebook, or gutted out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Micronesia Mall, I just heard from another tenant there that about 13 to 15 businesses have closed there or are in the process of closing. So no one has been to the mall because it's closed, because of the shutdown. But when you go there, you're going to notice about 13 to 15 businesses are not there anymore, which we don't know. They just silently move out.
Sure.
So who's going to pay GRT? Who's going to pay? Where's the jobs gone? Because like she said, you'll probably get your jobs back. Remember? Probably.
Probably.
Yeah. So where's the logic in this?
Well, and that's been kind of the thrust of Tall Tales, that there is no logic here. And that's why I think it's so important to keep poking at these folks so they realize that somebody, a lot of somebody realize that there's no logic connected with their approach to what they're doing.
See, Bob, you're right. I keep poking at it, but the damage is done. Now what?
I agree.
Now what? Yeah. Damage is done. People have left. They're not going to reopen just because 2021 rolls around and be like, all right, let's go open up again.
Nope.
They're not. It's done. They're out.
I agree, Fred.
Probably, and everyone says this is the time to start new and do other things that you probably never did before, for the private sector. And some of them have packed up and moved to the States or somewhere else. So the damage is done. And
yeah. You called it, Fred. So we'll keep on it, okay, Fred?
Okay.
Good talking to you, Fred. Okay, so let's see. I'm desperately seeking Susan. Oh, line one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, Susan.
Good afternoon. I really have been appreciating listening to your talk show every day, and I meant to be listen to you at the very beginning today, but something came up and I couldn't join in until later. So forgive me if my question has already been answered from something you might have said earlier.
Okay.
But I'm very curious in regards to our rights, and the First Amendment that you were talking about yesterday in regards to the freedom that we have of religion, and that us being not allowed to go to church is actually messing up with our rights. And I know it's kind of like the frog in the boiled water, where first it starts out not feeling anything, and then eventually the water gradually gets hotter and hotter until finally the frog is dead. And that's exactly what you've been talking about too, with socialism slowly taking over and coming upon us. And I think I have friends that were actually involved in Germany during the time of Hitler that shared about the gradualness of how things took over in countries around them. So my question, I guess, is, I'm aware of this, but what can we do as citizens now? What more can we do as citizens to fight for those rights back?
Susan, unfortunately, I've got some dynamite stuff in the calendar dealing with that issue, but I'm probably not going to get to it today, and I've been busy with some other topics. But the answer to your question is this, that it's time for our church to become the church militant. And this is what I've said before. When the governor said that churches are not essential, the bishop should have written and said, don't you dare say that churches are not essential, because we made a decision back in 1791 that churches are essential. And
right, and I really appreciated. I read the article about the efforts that the Catholic Church made to even try to be complementary to what was expected of them in keeping themselves safe. And I'm not personally a Catholic, but I'm still not able to attend my church either. So
this is what must be done, Susan. Churches, Catholic Church, Protestant Church, whatever, need to start holding services, and they need to, I've used the term Payless rules before. You know, Payless has their own rules. So many people in the store, they have to keep certain. Yeah, so churches need to have services, and they need to start using the Payless rules, because the church has made it too easy for the governor. You know, there was no pushback on the part of the churches, which is a bad situation, not only for now, but, you know, once it's kind of like the dog, once he gets a bone in his mouth, he's not going to let go of it. So the churches really need to wake up and become militant and defenders of the faith, and in the process, put the governor back where she belongs in the secular side, not telling us what we can do or what we can't do at our churches, telling us what we can do in crowds, but not at our churches.
Oh, okay, I really appreciate that. And then another quick question was, I just recently became familiar with Candid News Group and was reading all the articles, that many of them are ones that you're talking about on your show. And I know that there was a bill that unanimously was passed to be given to the governor, and she vetoed it. But yet it looked like, to me, something that would be to our advantage to have had. Am I following that correctly?
Are you talking about the one that called for the reports?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be to our advantage, but of course it would not be. The governor doesn't perceive it to be at her advantage. She just wants to do what she wants to do and doesn't feel like she needs to answer to anybody or report to anyone.
So again, can we, as citizens, then contact our senators again, like we did before for the other bills, and just tell them to override her veto?
We certainly
and tell them
can.
that's what we want?
We certainly can do that, Susan.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your help on understanding a little bit better of how we can really demand our rights. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Susan. All right, I've got, let's see, Frenchie on line 3. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
Good.
Good. As Joe is very busy today, so I don't know if you had time to look at all of or part of the governor's press conference. If there is a misnomer.
I haven't looked at any of it, Frenchie. And the Tall Tales, as I mentioned before, Tall Tales is not where you get the news. Tall Tales is where you get. Tall Tales is where you get the analysis. So if she said it today, then by the time Tall Tales is on tomorrow, you'll get the analysis, not the breaking news.
It looks like a lot of our listeners apparently did, seeing some of the comments. But one thing that was very clear is that if this administration is really against the First Amendment under all its form, may them be religious or the freedom of the press, because they were shooting down journalists that didn't stick to the administration playbook. So it was kind of pretty pathetic watching. The other thing that was interesting is that basically there are two doctors coming and explaining what they had put in place, and basically telling us that it was not much of a deal and that everything was under control. But then the conclusion from the governor was that she needed to extend the isolation for another 30 days. So it doesn't make any sense. But then again, this is the administration that put the assistant director of agriculture in charge of the Wuhan isolation sites. So it's weird. It's very weird. So, but I wanted to comment a little bit on what's going on with the church. Apparently, there is a lot of very heated debate at the Chancery, and there's basically three groups. There is the the lazy group of priests that don't want to do much and they like the status quo. There are the political ones that we all know, the usual suspect, like they say in Casablanca. And then there are the people that have been pushing to reopen because they are listening to their parishioners. And so far there hasn't been any decision on the bishop, except that they sound like they are going to do the all the I'm having a senior moment here. They're going to do baptism and things like this, and bring communion to the sick and stuff like that. And it sounds like Candid is organizing going to the cathedral this weekend and watching the Mass from their cell phones and iPads, and expecting the Archbishop to come out and give them communion. And it sounds like several of the local priests are willing to come out of their church and give communion to people that are on their parking lot. So it's kind of interesting. So that's where we are right now, and I understand that the bishop is considering having the churches reopen for Pentecost, which is still a month away, right? Because it's the end of, I think, I'm not quite sure, but I think Pentecost falls at the end of May this year, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I have not checked my calendar, but so that's where we are right now, and it's mind-boggling. You know, when you see Governor Liu, you know, she portrays herself as a progressive woman, like a lot of the Democratic Party governor, like the governor of Maine, the governor of Michigan, but they're actually very reactionaries. They are more reactionaries than most conservatives. You know, they want to take away people's rights. I mean, this press conference was a joke today. I mean, the way she was handling the media, refusing to answer to questions or even consider listening to the question, it's like a banana republic, you know. I mean, it's just amazing, and the way she has not, and that's my take a little bit on, you know, the memo from the liturgical commission was sent to both the governor and the director of the health department. So far, the governor did not answer. And I basically was telling some of the priests I'm talking to, I said, this is deliberate. She let the director give the answer. That way, if it works well for her, then she takes the credit, and we have seen her do that a lot. She takes credit for the work of others, like the delegate, for example. But if it doesn't work, then she throws the person under the bus, which she has also done over and over again with people that work for her. And it doesn't inspire much confidence. And I think when people, no matter what the country or the type of government we have, maybe municipal, state, or federal, when you lose the confidence of the electorate, of the people you're supposed to administer, then there is no trust. And I think the biggest damage that's being done right now for our democracy on Guam is the loss of trust of the people that govern us. So that's my take today.
Very interesting, and I agree 100%, Frenchie.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. Tomorrow is Friday, and then we'll see. This weekend should be quite interesting. I think what will happen and what will fail to happen will tell us a lot about where we are.
Yeah.
But so far, it seems like she's steadfast on continuing in her pig-headed way. And continue to, she's basically killing half of the economy of the island, and apparently she thinks that's no big deal, I guess. Maybe she sees it as an opportunity to buy some business on the cheap. I don't know. It's very strange. Anyhow, that was my take. I will continue listening to the show.
Thank you, Frenchie.
You're welcome. You have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
On the island.
So let's see. I got a call coming in from Senator Chris Duenas. Chris, we're going to go to Churchill Downs, and we'll come back from Churchill Downs and let you climb on the horse.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. COVID-19 attacks the respiratory system, so watch out for potential symptoms like fever, loss of smell or taste, a new and persistent cough, and shortness of breath. Call your doctor or 311 if you develop these symptoms. Go to a hospital only if these symptoms worsen. Warning signs include trouble breathing, persistent chest pain, and bluish lips or face. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and we go from there straight to Senator Chris Duenas. And Chris, I'm just wondering, I could talk with the casting director if you're interested in a role in the 19th floor. Would you be interested in that?
It sounds sinister, but I've put my faith in you before, Your Honor, Senator Marine, and my favorite talk show host. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can't work you into this 19th floor then, Chris. And is there anything else we can help you with this afternoon?
Okay, now that I understand what the 19th floor is all about, I'm going to have to rescind that acceptance.
All right. Fair enough.
I'm going to make, my plan was even up to the seventh inning, or the stretch here, was actually just a pithy comment. I really enjoyed all the callers today, and most especially our friend Frenchie. So along the lines of, and I really hope the church responds to this excellent outpouring of parishioners, callers, others who, this of all the full court press that the public has put on checkpoints and everything else, that people have been frustrated and outright, disobedient of at some points. I really hope this will be the one, though, Bob, because I think this is the one that cuts to the heart of the people. Great callers today, even new callers. I really enjoyed, and the female caller, I think her name was Susan. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I want to say, Bob, in comparison, so Father Gofigan and others, as the letter was written, used the pay less model. And I wanted to take away one more thing that I'm going to ask our church to do, because I plan to go and bring a lawn chair and stay away from folks, but probably sit in a lawn chair on 9:30 outside of my beloved cathedral. And I'm hoping, I'm going to use it in that, we had the pay less analogy. I'm going to use the analogy of I may take out dinner tonight. And if I do that, I'm going to go to a place that's serving to go. The individual there will have a mask. I will have my mask. We'll do an exchange, and I'll take my meal home for my family. And so I think we can hope that we could be served the Eucharist outside, just like a takeout meal.
Yeah, I do too, and it's what the church really needs to do. The church has been too compliant, too helpful, too easy for the governor, and the church just needs to be the church and comply with the Payless rules, but still be the church.
Absolutely. So if we can take in on our social media the mass as it goes forward, I think that would be an amazing demonstration for the clergy also to come out and give us the blessing of the Eucharist, much like we were willing to do the Payless model inside the church, and so we're willing to do the Payless model outside the church, and then also we're asking for the to-go model from our restaurant.
There you go. Yeah.
So anyways, like I said, Bob, enjoyed the show and look forward to listening to the rest of it. But, you know, I think you really started this, Bob, you know, when Martinez, you know, was trying to get your take on it. And I think maybe even Martinez may be changing a little bit on his thoughts when he wanted to get your take on it. And I think you were the first one, honestly, that really put your foot down on this, saying, no, look, this is not the same comparison in terms of what the rights and obligations are and what the rights of the people are. And I actually had to listen with interest too, because I was curious. I understand both sides, but I really, really saw when you put your foot down on that issue and the fundamentals of it. And then seeing that Father Gofigan, you know, basically when I don't think he was really even asking permission. I think he was saying, this is what we're going to do. And then you've followed through. I think a lot of this really started from you educating people on the First Amendment and what it means to stand up for that. So I appreciate it, Bob, honestly.
Well, I'm sure you're right, Chris. And, you know, sometimes I kind of got to watch myself because Tall Tales is such a powerful device that I want to make sure that I use it with a certain degree of care because it does have such worldwide influence, certainly island-wide influence. So thank you for recognizing that, Chris.
Always will, my friend. Take care.
Okay, Chris. Bye. It's about time for Jack. I got time for just one more call here before we start Ravel's Bolero.
Paul, sir, on line 2. Paul.
Paul. Good afternoon, Paul.
Yeah, I'll say I just wanted to let you know that at the Manilao Church, are you hearing me okay?
Yeah.
At the Manilao Church, traffic is a shambles, and I think it would be great if believers from all around would drive right there and express when they're stopped, express their need to see the pastor, to visit their church, to have a moment of grace that they have not been used to having. I think it'd be great if there was about 1,000 cars that would show up there in the next hour.
At Manilo, huh?
Yes.
What did you say was a shambles?
Traffic is a shambles because there's quite a police presence, and the police presence needs to be aware that there's a lot of people that would like to stop and worship.
I see. Okay, well, Paul, I'm hoping that people are listening to you on the drive hour, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm glad you got in just before the end of the show, Paul. Maybe you can call back tomorrow, okay?
Very good.
Thank you.